Greetings folks, Steve here, and tonight what I'm working on is turbo-400. This is the transmission out of the Lexus. I pulled it out last night after I got off of work, and we're looking for what's causing it to have an extreme delayed shift into forward reverse. Trans brake only works when you rev up the engine, and got a gauge on the line pressure port on this thing, and we're seeing 0 PSI for several minutes until the engine's revved or it's ran for a while, at which point we'll see the pressure kick up to about 30 to 40 PSI at idle in all gears, and up to 2,000 RPM in all gears. We'll see up to upwards of about 70 or so. So this is a reverse manual valve body equipped transmission. I did not build this transmission originally. I bought it with the shift kit, the trans brake kit, and all that already installed on it. I did take it apart and put some new soft parts in it, new clutches, and put it back together whenever I got it. And that's really all I've done to this transmission. So, oh, and I replaced the pump because we had a tore up pump that was causing real similar symptoms previously. But more recently, as you may know, we've been experiencing a vibration in the engine at low RPM, or just not in the engine, but as the engine's running at lower RPM, there's kind of like a, pretty subtle, but I could tell something was off. And here's what I found already. So I've got the transmission on my table here. I pulled the pan off. I pulled the pan off last night and drained all this shit out. There is a thick layer of clutch material, of just mud, gunk at the bottom of the pan. There is some metal debris. There was definitely some chunks of metal. Not super excessive, honestly. Just a couple of small chunks, and the fluid is just blacker than black. So you can see a little bit of the fluid down here in the corner of the case. I mean, it is nasty. So, torque converter was stuck on the transmission, and I actually had to use a pry bar to kind of get it loose, to get it to come off. And here's what I saw inside this thing after I removed it. So, if you look down there, you can see some pieces. You're supposed to just see a hole here. Oh, see that? I don't know what that is. Don't get me lying to you boys. I don't build torque converters. I had PTC build this torque converter for me when we first got the Lexus running. It's always just been really tight. After a while, it kind of loosened itself up, which kind of seemed like a good thing. Then it started kind of like blowing through the converter over time at some point. And anyway, this torque converter's pretty much sucked since day one. Had them restalled to try to loosen it up. Didn't help at all. I just don't think it was ever good. I don't think this was ever a good torque converter. And here we are. So this thing definitely came apart on the inside. There's all kinds of stuff getting ground up in there. And I'm willing to bet whatever came apart in there probably went through the pump on this and tore it up. But we're here to find out. So I'm going to have to order a new torque converter. So what I'm about to do now is pull the valve body, pull the pump, take a look at the inside of this thing, and see if we can find any carnage. Hopefully it's not too bad. We can order some new clutches and clean everything out real good, and get a new torque converter and have Ursula back on the road in no time. But let's see what we got inside this bad boy. I'm gonna go ahead and open this thing up because I gotta know. Ooh, it stinks in there. Yeah, there's something going on here for sure. Yeah, we've worn in the pump stator. Pump gears are starting to get pitted. A lot of wear on the pump. There's just a ton of wear. Why would this wear so bad? So this is particularly concerning because when I got this transmission, the pump was wiped out like in the same manner, and now it's done it again. And this car hasn't even really been driven all that much, to be honest. Like, I don't know what would be causing my pump failure. This gear looks like it's just had junk going through it. I mean, nothing severe, but it's, if you look at the inside of the teeth, you probably can't really tell, but it's supposed to be just smooth, and you can see how rough it looks. So it's gonna need a pump. There's a lip on the inside here You can feel the edge where these gears have just wore into this pump. So it's gonna need a whole new pump because we got right here where that inner gear rides. You can see, I don't know if you can see, but this should be flush right here. This part and this part should be the same height, and they are not. That gear started to wear down right here. So we're never gonna be able to make any sort of pressure, and that's just no good.
Let me see it, but you let me see it. You won't let me be. Always dream, you ain't real. Always dream, you ain't real. Let me see it, but you let me see it. You won't. Always dream, you ain't real. Always dream, you ain't real. Let me see it, but you let me see it. You won't let me be.
All right, so Lexus Trans is all tore apart for the most part. And I know that I got this all on film taking it apart, but there is some pretty serious damage that I did not immediately identify. So let me kind of go through that. This right here is the direct drum. This is direct drum assembly. It's got a sprag here. Spins one way, not the other, as you can see. The inside of it houses a piston and a clutch pack, which can be found down here on the floor. So when I was inspecting this, I noticed this little ring here. Well, first of all, like, as I took it apart, both of these pieces were off of it. And then I noticed in the order of things, this little ring, and I'm like, well, where the hell does this ring go? Like, it's not a bearing. And I posted up on the 400 group because I just wasn't sure. I'm like, where the hell did this come from? And some people were like, oh, it's a spacer that someone made probably to get the in-play ride or something. I'm like, okay, that seems strange. And then someone's like, I think that's part of the direct drum. And I'm like, what do you mean? So I'm looking at this, and sure enough, this is part of the direct drum. The snap ring, there's a spiral ring that should go under this and hold this little guy on and hold the sprag on. Like this whole assembly would be retained by this, and this is part of this casting. This should be attached to that, and it broke off. So that's part of our rubble down here, is the spiral ring that failed. Or, I'm not sure. I think the spiral ring failed. When I assembled this, I reused the spiral rings and they weren't in great shape. In fact, the one that I put here, I believe, was in terrible shape, and I actually bent it back to make it work. That was a mistake. That was a mistake, boys. But you know how I do. I just had to get it together. Didn't care about the consequences. Well, now there's consequences. So that's probably explains the breakdown of the intermediate components there. So those are part of the intermediate return springs, or intermediate return spring retainer. That's what all the plastic bits are, and all those little tore up springs. Which brings me to the next bit of damage that I did not immediately identify, and that is here on our intermediate drum assembly, I guess. This is what I think it's called. I might be wrong. Don't bother correcting me. I haven't memorized all the terminology yet. So this piston, it's got a seal on the inside, seal on the outside, goes in here, has clutch packs that it applies, and I found that it too has broken its snap ring land off. There should be a groove here for a snap ring that would hold this piston down and hold everything in place there, and it is also missing. So my intermediate drum, or center support, this is actually the center support, but the intermediate piston is here. So my center support's trashed, my direct drive drum is trashed, my intermediate return spring retainer and all that's trashed, my pump and stator are both trashed. So we have got a lot of damage on this stuff. So here I have another Turbo 400. You guys might remember, I didn't talk about it a whole lot, but I copped this bad boy from a guy I know that owns a shop up the street. Actually, the same guy I bought this 400 from. This one was already built internally.
I went through it, put new clutch packs in it, but I didn't change anything about the way it's built, except I did add a restrictor to the pump to try to reduce charge pressure and the torque converter. But this one I got from the same guy, and coincidentally, I took this out of the car that it was originally installed in for that guy. So I went and worked with him for a day. I was kind of interested in working for him, does a lot of hot rod stuff, but didn't end up coming to an agreement with him on employment. But my time working there, just for one day pro bono, just to kind of get the lay of the land, I took this transmission out of a C3 Corvette with 30,000 original miles. So this is a very lightly used 400. Great transmission. It's going to be a great core. I gave him $200 for this. So stole the thing, but it's bone stock. It's got a governor. It's got a modulator valve, stock valve body, stock everything. However, it's not perfect because when I burned up the first pump in this 400, I stole it out of this one. So this is the pump that was actually in this one previously, and it's wore out too. But everything else of this transmission is in really low use condition. So what I've decided to do here, since each one of these components that I broke, the pump, the direct drum, and the center support, that's several $100s worth of stuff. I paid $200 for this. Okay, now the pump's not going to do me any good, so I still have to order one of those. I'm hoping that just the stator's messed up on it and I can just reuse the pump. We'll see. I'm about to find that out as soon as I pull it apart. But all these other components, I should be able to just steal right out of here. Get all these parts cleaned up. I'll reuse, obviously, the valve body and stuff for our built trans. I'll reuse that case since I went through the trouble of cutting the bill off and everything. Really no reason to do any extra work here. But I have an excellent donor transmission. But the caveat here is that this was supposed to be for the Z. This was going to be the transmission that we made it up to that 2JZ that we threw into our Datsun. So at this point, I have to choose either I look for another 400 and just become a 400 expert over time because I've just done this so much. Or the option that I like a lot more than that is actually going Power Glide on the Z instead of a 400. I think Power Glide would be a great fit for the Z build. Build it myself. Get the core, build it up, do the trans brake and everything, and the valve body, manual shift, then I think that'd be a really good combo. The Power Glide's smaller, it's lighter, and it works really good. Like a 2-speed works really good. There's a lot of really fast 2JZ cars running Power Glides. So I think that's probably what I'm going to do. At this point, we're going to get the Lexus back up on the road using the parts here. I'll continue to have some spare 400 parts from other parts of this transmission that I haven't used. I can probably get some money for this case. That's the plan right now. I'm not doing a full rebuild here. You won't hear me say I rebuild my transmissions because I don't. I don't go through and replace all the bushings. This was a good working transmission. It's full of gunk that needs to be cleaned up. So it's going to get a really good cleaning, but I'm not going that deep into it. And I know that's crazy. Everyone's like, you got it out, you got it apart, you might as well. But no, it's a lot more work to do all that stuff. And my experience with these aftermarket seal kits is that half the time, whatever seal you're putting in fits crappier than the one that was in the first place. So I'm not going down that road. I'll air check everything and make sure it's all good. But this transmission was in good working order, aside from the low pressure caused by the pump coming apart. Honestly, the broken snap rings didn't even seem to affect its function because once it built that pressure up, it worked perfectly fine. So we're going to give it a good clean out, fix the pump, fix the snap rings, steal all the parts we need out of this, and get Ursula back on the road again, hopefully in the next week or two. PTC has had my torque converter for a couple weeks now. Last I heard yesterday, they said it might be done this week, and it should be better than ever. So we'll see how that all transpires. Anyway, I need to get this thing apart, find out exactly what gaskets I need to order or any other miscellaneous parts I might need so I can get that stuff on the way. And hopefully in the next 2 weeks, we will have Ursula back on the road. All right, y'all, out in the garage, and I got the donor 400 all tore apart. I'm kind of comparing everything to see if the components I need are going to be a direct match. So starting with our direct drum, that's going to be this guy right here. You can see the difference here. This one has this land right here that the snap ring goes under, whereas our broken one from our 400
Does not. Actually, that's it. It's sitting right next to it. So you can see the damage there. Now, there is a pretty concerning difference between the two. Let me bring this up here. So, it would seem this is not actually the direct drum for a Turbo 400. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, so donor transmission, I already pulled the snap ring off. Of course, once again, land, broken land. All right, so you can see how it feels. All right, so there's a little plate here that comes off. And you can see here, this little tin, little cage right here. And that's because this is a roller type clutch. So this is a one-way roller. What it does is exactly in the name. I'm gonna try to squeeze it back out there real quick. All right, so when on, it will spin this direction, but it won't spin the other way. It grabs the other way. So one-way roller. That is what comes stock in most later 400s. Earlier ones did have a sprag in here, but it didn't have that many elements. So it was a smaller sprag. Anyway, you got the roller type, which is like this. I'll show you a little bit more on this. So it's smooth on the inside of here. And there's just little rollers, literally, little balls. And this only moves about that much. It lets the ring move one way, but it locks it the other way. And the way it does that, see if I can take this off without pieces flying. So this just has like a little spring, like a little crinkly piece of metal, pushing the roller in one direction. And set that down gently because it will fall apart. And then here you have these grooves. So the way it works is the little roller, whenever you're going clockwise, just sitting in like the non-pinched area. I don't know how well you can see that. It's sitting like in the loose area. So it's just spinning freely. When you try to go the other way, it rolls the roller back and squeezes it into this tapered section. And that's what prevents it from going forward. So it's pretty common practice for manufacturers to use these on transmissions. That's something you see, it's pretty common. But it's not great, apparently. So all the 400 guys actually replace the direct drum with the direct drum out of a 4L80 transmission, which is a direct fit without modification. And so this is the one that came out of our trans, and guess what? It's got a freaking sprag in it. And the way the sprags work, so the way sprags work is they're not rollers at all. It kind of looks like it's a roller, but it's not. They're the shape of like a little hourglass, kind of. You can kind of see their shape right there. And so when you turn them, they all kind of shimmy one way, and when you go back the other way, they kind of, they pivot, and they all just squeeze the inside hub. So this is the better version here. This is what you want. And you'll see that I can't just slide this thing onto here because this one has the little bites taken out of it. This one is totally smooth. So I'm trying to kind of gauge like how big of a deal it is to run a roller, because to get a 4L80 drum with the 34 element sprag is several $100s. But anyway, I might just send it with the roller if I get some feedback that a lot of guys run the roller. I know these trans are pretty strong stock. This is one of the weaker parts of them. So it's a super common upgrade. If I got to spend a couple $100 to do it, then I guess I will. But the other thing going on, and I haven't really decided or learned the significance of this yet either. So then we have our center support, which is the other damaged part. This is our donor one. You see the land here with the snap ring on it. And this is our broken one. And you see the snap ring's gone, as is the land that was once here. And I don't know where it went. It's just gone. It's just gone, but there's no snap ring there anymore. This is a cast piston, or not cast, sorry. This is just a stamped steel piston. We have a cast aluminum piston on this one. I don't know if that matters. I don't really know. Other than that, they look pretty similar. They have the same thickness, it appears, or real close. So I'm hoping, disregard this. This is a separate component. This is that guy, which also has a roller clutch. There is a roller clutch in that component also. I think that's called the low planetary, or the low clutch.
I don't remember. Anyway, so I'm trying to figure out what parts are gonna work, what I need to order. I got my new pump. This is my new pump. This is like a refurbished pump. It's got new bushings in it. I already opened it up and made sure everything was smooth. I'll show you that real quick. All right, so I'm gonna have to swap over like the pressure valve springs and stuff. So I still gotta do that. But you'll see our stator. This is perfectly smooth right here. The other one had a big groove cut around here where those gears had been riding. So this one is nice and smooth. And these gears, these are new gears. And they come out and this comes out nice. There's no lip. The other one had like a lip worked around here. Underneath this was all boogered up. And you see this one is in really good shape. You can't feel anything odd. The edges feel nice. And so I am quite pleased with that. And I got this, how much did I pay for this pump? So most of the pumps I found online were a couple $100. I got this one for like $150, I think. Maybe even less, might have been like $130. It was like $75 plus $50 shipping. So yeah, so we got a pretty sweet deal on that and it's in great shape. So that's really good. All right, we are just leaving PTC Torque Converters in Kennedale. Picked up this little box right here that's got Ursula's new torque converter in it. I believe it's largely like the old one was, but they tell me that it was it has the anti-ballooning plate and all TIG welded, all the fins or whatever it is they do to make torque converters be good. So here's hoping we get a little better longevity out of this one. I am expecting some parts to come in the mail this week for the transmission to get it all back together. I got the case tore down, everything's cleaned up. I got what I need out of the donor trans. I ordered some other things and we should have those parts this week. And as soon as that happens, we will begin assembly of the trans. Next weekend, trans should be going in the Lexus. So we'll have her back up on the road. At the shop today, just cleaning up some parts. Got my valve body up here to clean out in the parts washer. Took the piston out of my forward drum to clean out behind it because it had a lot of clutch material built up around the lugs and down under the piston. So I wanted to get it nice and clean. Our pump needed to have the spring swapped over to it and then have a restrictor stuck in it. There's a little restrictor in there. We'll go into that a little bit more later. And this is the pan. I just wanted to show you guys before I dump this. This is what I'm scraping out of the pan. The whole bottom of the pan was just caked, and this stuff, I scraped it up, and I mean, it was like stuck. I was like, I had to like carve it up. But this is all the junk, the clutch material and whatever else. I don't even know, like, I don't know what this is, dude. It's really firm, like tar. I guess it's just cooked down transmission fluid mixed with clutch material, and it's just like clay. If anyone can shed any insight on what this tells them about this transmission, let me know. I have concerns that my cooler is not sufficient to keep the transmission cool. I don't have a sensor in this thing, so I don't know what kind of temps it runs, but I've done quite a bit of street driving on it, and it's just it's a pretty small cooler I have. It's like a 3/8 tube, and just like fins, you know, it's not like a multi-row or anything like that, and it's mounted up in front of the radiator, where the fan does provide some airflow at low speeds, and I don't know if it's sufficient. You know, we might not have enough cooling for the trans, but I know that things probably start getting hot whenever you're slipping from low pressure, so I'm pretty sure that's what really cooked the forward clutches, was the slippage that I started experiencing here in the last few weeks of it running. So anyway, gonna get this all cleaned out, and as long as my clutches are at the house, we should be assembling the rest of the trans tonight. Okay, y'all, so I got all the parts I need for assembly. I got my clutches soaking in some clean ATF. She's over here on the bench. Got my direct drum and my forward drum here, and I put some new seals in the pistons for these. So I just kind of wanted to go over real quick, but there's a couple of things that are real common to do to these transmissions for modification. First things first, our pump. This is a new pump, or a refurbished pump. There's a stiffer spring that goes in with most shift kits and trans brakes, or all shift kits and trans brakes. So we got that done. And then we got some brand new gears, of course, and everything fits real nice. For a trans brake application, you are generally going to want to have a restrictor
installed in the pump. So if you look, where's my finger? If you look right there, that's just a little bolt that I've cut down and drilled a hole through. It's got about an 1/8 inch hole going through it, and that is for fluid that is directed towards the torque converter. So when these valve bodies, which is another thing that's super modified, a lot of this is just locked into place. These valves don't really move anymore, or have the springs changed in them. I'm not exactly sure. I didn't purchase this trans brake valve body. It was in the transmission when I got it. So I don't really know what this valve body is. But basically, because of the valve body and the pump springs and stuff, this transmission runs a lot more pressure. So when you have that 200 PSI and the line pressure all the time, that's getting fed to the torque converter, it has a tendency to want to push the torque converter off of the transmission. Like the torque converter is full, it's got all this pressure in it, and it is pushing into the flex plate of the engine, like literally pushing up against the flex plate with that force from the pressure. So the purpose of that restrictor there is to limit the amount of the volume and the pressure that gets to the torque converter. Because if you have too much pressure in there and you have that torque converter pushing up against the engine like that, it can cause damage to the engine. It could actually hurt your thrust bearings or cause like an excess thrust situation on the engine. So pretty standard practice to put a restrictor there. So I did that. You just tap the threads and it's just screwing a set screw that has a hole in it. So anyway, pump's all good and new with a stiffer spring. Another popular upgrade is to switch to a filter that is a screen element instead of like a fiber gasket. So screen, it's gonna let little light shit through, but it's gonna filter out any hard stuff. So that's pretty common practice. The direct drum that I had to order, this is one of the parts that was broken, and that's this guy right here. This is a upgrade. This is actually a 4L80 drum, and I think I went into this already, but it has a 34 element sprag here instead of the roller bearing. I think I went into that the other day. So in order to, typically with trans brakes, you're gonna have to add a bleed hole. So I drilled this little tiny hole, little 1/16 hole there, and that's just to help bleed off pressure so you don't have unwanted application of the clutches, because you're just running all that pressure and things are spinning really fast, and just the centrifugal force and all the fluid that's in there can cause the clutches to kind of stick together and move things. That's what I understand the purpose is. I'm not really sure, but everyone knows you got to put that hole there for some reason. So that's what I'm going with. So I got that done. If you look at the other side, you probably can't really tell, because if you don't know what this looked like new, then you would never know. But it's been machined on the piston. So this is your piston right here, this ring around. It's like ribbed guy here. This is what actually lifts, like pushes on against the clutches. But if you look real close, it's really flat. It's been machined shorter. And they do that to either increase the number of clutches that you can fit in the clutch pack for better grip, for better application, or to use a thicker steel or thicker clutches that can tolerate more heat, and they'll just have a better life. Stock transmissions usually have a waved steel that's literally just like a steel is like. So here's what a steel is. A steel is just a steel plate with teeth on the outside that grip to the case, and it goes between clutches, which have teeth on the inside that grip to the component. So typically you'll have a waved steel that kind of acts like a spring. It's a cushion that softens ships. This isn't needed in a high-powered application. You want the ships to be really firm and hard, because any slippage or any softness you have can increase heat. Like you're slowing that apply time, in which the clutches, from the time the clutches begin to apply to the time that they're fully coupled, and that creates heat, and also it slows you down. So generally you're going to get rid of the wave plate, probably replace it with an extra clutch if you can. There's a lot of stack shit in there and see what it measures up to. The clutch clearance that you want whenever you have the stack of clutches fully assembled in the component is typically about 0.010 of an inch per friction. So the clutch pack I just installed, this is your low reverse clutch, and there's 3 frictions in there. So I'll use my feeler gauge to see if we got around 30 thousandths clearance. And as long as it's pretty close to that, then I think we're okay. I think some guys like to go a little tighter on the forward drum and a little looser on the direct, or maybe I got those flipped, I'm not really sure.
that's for much smarter minds than mine. So this transmission already had machined pistons in the direct drum and in the forward drum. And I replaced the direct drum, so I had to take the piston out of my bad one and swap it over to the new one. So it got a new seal. What else? Any of the plastic thrust washers are going to be swapped out with like a metallic one, or possibly even a Torrington or like a needle bearing type bearing. That's a pretty popular thing to upgrade. The 4L80 drum fits right in this thing with no problem. Like, it's a stock replacement. You put much stiffer springs. These have gold springs. That's a much stiffer spring than what was stock. It's a stiffer spring to reduce the amount of time it takes to release the clutches whenever the trans brake is released. This ensures that everything releases immediately instead of the clutches dragging and creating heat and friction when you're leaving the line. On the pump, you'll see the seals. Oh shit, where are my seals? Don't spill. Okay, there. All right, so the pump uses this is a high pressure seal, and it's made of, I don't know what. It feels like cardboard. Like, it feels like felt. I don't know. They're really soft, but this is a high pressure ring as opposed to the stock stuff. And this is kind of counterintuitive to me. I don't really understand it, but the stock ring is made out of steel or iron, or I don't know. It's made out of metal, and it's got these little hooks that hook it together. Anyway, you would think the metal one would be the strong one, but I think they have a tendency to shatter or crack or shear. I don't know what they do, but you're gonna go to this soft little dinky like split. It's got like a split in it. First time I saw this, I was like, oh, that ring's broken, but no, that's how they are. That's how they go in. So that's another popular thing that everyone uses, and that pretty much covers it. Like, all these hard parts, you could get a stronger, better billet, whatever. We're pretty much used to using. This is kind of just a basic built transmission. But anyway, that's kind of the gist of it. So, one other thing. The snap ring on the direct drum, this is one of our failures on the other one. But instead of using just a traditional like C-shaped snap ring, like a normal snap ring, it is a spiral ring. So it actually goes around like 2 times. And it's hard to tell by looking at it, but the snap ring right here is a spiral ring. So it adds some strength. It does a better job holding everything together there. And I think that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna haul ass to try to get this all together. So that's the plan. So I'm gonna get trucking. I'm not gonna film much more, so I will just see you guys when the transmission is together. All right, folks, we're at the shop now. The transmission is fully assembled and sealed up, and we got Ursula up on the lift. I'm up here on a Saturday to knock this out, and just gonna get it back in there, and I will touch base with you guys once we got fluid in her and let you know how it all went. All right, boys, flash forward. We are at the house now in Ursula. A couple events happened that I did not film. I just kind of went through all the motions and got out of there. So we're at the house now. What had happened is I got the transmission fully installed, started the car up, and as soon as the engine started running, I heard a plank, like a clunk. And I had no drive gears. No gears were working. Engine was running. I'm like, okay, so obviously I screwed something up. So I'm like, well, okay, let me drop the pan. Like, I don't think I did anything catastrophically wrong here. So I dropped the pan down, and I found the pressure regulator valve and the spring and all those components, the snap ring and everything in my trans pan. So evidently when I installed the pressure regulator valve into the pump, the snap ring didn't fully seat down in its groove. And as soon as it saw some pressure, it just blew it out. Luckily, on this transmission, you can access the bore of that valve without having to take the pump out, which is very fortunate because I didn't want to pull this transmission back out again. So with a little bit of finagling, I was able to get that valve back installed and get the snap ring in. It was kind of a pain, but I got through it. I even made my son get his hands dirty and help. So after that, put it all back together thinking like, man, if this happens again, there must be something wrong with the core that they used to refurbish, because this is a refurbished pump. Like, there must be something wrong with the core. Like, that groove is, maybe the land has been broken out. I don't know. It looked fine. Anyway, stuck it all back together, and everything was fine after that. Started it up, went through the gears, everything worked fine. So went ahead and just loaded it straight on the trailer. I basically, I ran it about 100 yards, felt it hit each gear, and stuck it on the trailer and got out of there. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this thing for a quick drive, see how it feels going through the gears. Another thing I did, ever since I did the engine bay harness, which is basically a body harness, my speedometer hasn't been working, and I definitely wired in all the provisions for the wheel speed sensors in the ABS module so that I would have a speedometer. I went through a lot of extra steps to ensure the speedometer works, and it didn't when I got it all together. So what I did after that is, what I did last night is I spent some time diagnosing that problem, and I just knew it had something to do with the harness I made. I must have messed something up when I was routing wires, like something went wrong with the harness. But after doing a bunch of testing, the wires were actually all good. They were routed properly. They had good continuity. And the problem was actually the right front wheel speed sensor had an open in the wire that's part of the sensor. So had nothing to do with anything I did, really just strange timing, the way that it started acting up only at that moment. I didn't touch that sensor at all when I did the work. So chased my tail for that for an hour or two last night, but got it all sorted out. Was able to repair the existing sensor, and so right now I'm going to make sure the transmission shifts through the gears, and I'm going to make sure my speedometer works, and that is the main objective for this test drive. Another thing that happened at the shop when I was assembling the transmission is, so I get in the car to test out the trans, and I start cranking, and the car starts, kind of like hesitates and finally starts, and I realize it's dumping fuel everywhere. Well, apparently my fuel feed that goes into the back of the fuel rail, whenever I had tipped the engine over to remove the transmission, apparently that line had been pressed up against the firewall some amount, so it actually split that line. So I'm like, okay, I got the trans in, I'm pissing fuel everywhere, and I need to repair a fuel line. I get the fuel line fixed. I have no gears. I got to drop the pan, redo the pressure valve in the pump, or reinstall the pressure valve in the pump, put the pan back up, fill it up again. Anyway, after all that, it started working okay. Let's try the speedo. Nice, first gear. Oh, speedo's working. Second gear, slaps right into gear real hard. And speedo is operational. We are back in business, baby. Yeah. All right, speedo is back. And also the fuel gauge had been not working because of the way I crammed those two pumps in the tank. So I fixed that the other night too. So all of our gauges that needed to work are working. So that's excellent news. We're shifting through gears, no problem. Everything feels good. There is a slight little ticking noise. See if you can hear this. I can't hear it. I'll drop a video. I took a video of that noise happening. It's a little ratcheting, like a light, weird noise that the trans has always made, but it's still doing it even after tearing it apart and putting it back together. So I'm not sure what that is, but everything is right with the trans. Let's get up here at the stop line. We'll try out the trans brake. See what that does. All right, so my trans brakes are the shift buttons here. Burn first, hit the button. Whoa! All right. Whee! Ursula's back, baby! And better than ever, maybe. The shifts are so good, the trans brake works perfect. Speedo and fuel gauge are working. Ha, we're in great shape. So as for right now, Ursula is back up and running, and that's all I got for you this week. But tune in next week. We're going to be taking Old Goldie out to the track. So like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys then.